The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council was the most beautiful room in the known universe. Its walls were made of living crystal that changed color with the mood of those inside. Its ceiling showed the real stars of the galaxy, spinning slowly overhead. 12,000 seats rose in circles around a central platform, and today every single seat was filled. High Arbiter stood at the center, his silver robes flowing around his tall, thin body. He was old, even by standards. He had served on the council for 300 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species discover space travel and join the galactic community. Nothing surprised him anymore. Until today. "Fellow members of the council," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. "I have called this emergency session because we face a threat unlike any we have seen before. Not an invasion, not a war, something far more dangerous." The chamber fell silent. They were known for being calm and logical. If was worried, everyone should be worried. He raised his hand, and a hologram appeared above the platform. It showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. "Earth," said, "home of the humans. They joined our community 83 years ago. At that time, we considered them primitive, emotional, chaotic. We gave them limited membership and expected them to stay in their corner of the galaxy, learning from their betters." He paused. The hologram changed, showing a map of the galaxy. Red dots began appearing slowly at first, then faster and faster, spreading like a disease across the stars. "We were wrong." The red dots now covered nearly a third of the galaxy. "These marks show confirmed human cultural influence," continued. "Human languages spoken, human customs practiced, human ideas spreading." A murmur ran through the chamber. The ambassador leaned forward in her seat. The collective shifted as one, their shared mind processing the information. "Let me give you examples," said. "On Prime, our own, young people have started gathering in groups to listen to human music. They call it jazz. They move their bodies in strange ways. They say it makes them feel free." Several in the audience looked uncomfortable. Some of them had children who did exactly this. On the academic worlds, philosophers now debate human concepts. They argue about something called individual rights. They question whether governments should serve the people instead of the other way around. The ambassador's face showed no emotion, but her hands gripped her armrest tightly. "And the collectorate of has reported something that should be impossible." Turned to face the section where they sat together, their minds linked in perfect harmony. "Members of your collective have begun expressing personal preferences, individual thoughts, separate desires." They did not respond, but those who knew them well could see the fear in their movements. "Human food is served in restaurants across 400 worlds," continued. "Human stories are told to children at bedtime. Human languages are taught in schools as secondary tongues, and human ideas about government have sparked 3 revolutions in the past decade alone." He let that sink in. 3 revolutions. 3 stable empires, some of them thousands of years old, torn apart because their people started believing they deserved a voice in their own future. "The humans have done what no war fleet could accomplish," said. "They have invaded our minds. They have infected our cultures. And they did it so quietly that we did not even notice until it was almost too late." He raised his hand again. "I propose the containment protocols. All humans must return to their home system. Human cultural products must be banned. Human languages must be forbidden in official communications. Trade with humanity must be suspended." The vote was held immediately. 847 species voted yes. Only 12 voted no. In the far corner of the chamber, in the small section given to junior species, Ambassador Wei watched the vote with a calm expression. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She had served as Earth's ambassador for 20 years. Her aide, a young man named, leaned close to her. "Ambassador, what do we do? They're going to expel us from the galaxy." smiled slightly. Do you know the old Earth saying about closing the barn door after the horses have bolted? Frowned, I don't think I do. It means trying to prevent something that has already happened. Stood up and gathered her things. They think they can contain us. They think 83 years is a short time. She looked out at the chamber, at all those ancient species who had looked down on humanity since they first arrived. They don't understand humans at all. 83 years is 3 generations. That's enough time for us to make friends. Real friends. The kind who will choose us over the council. They walked out of the chamber together. Behind them was still speaking, outlining the details of the containment protocols. He sounded confident. He sounded like someone who believed he had solved the problem. Knew better. Back on Earth, the news arrived within hours. Emergency meetings were called. Military leaders gathered in secure rooms. Scientists ran calculations. Politicians argued about responses. But in Geneva, at the headquarters of the United Earth Government, President Santos sat quietly in her office, reading the full text of the Council's decree. When her advisors rushed in, expecting panic, they found her drinking tea and looking out the window at the mountains. Madam President, General said, they've given us 1 year to withdraw all humans from Council space. We have 47 million citizens living on other worlds. We can't possibly evacuate them all in time. Santos turned to face him. James, sit down. All of you sit down. They sat, confused by her calmness. Let me show you something, Santos said. She activated the holographic display on her desk. A map of the galaxy appeared, similar to the one had shown the Council. But this map had different markings. Blue dots are hospitals using human-designed medical equipment, Santos explained. Green dots are agricultural systems running human software. Yellow dots are worlds where human entertainment is the primary source of media. Red dots are places where human-trained teachers work in schools. She let them look. The galaxy was covered in colors. We didn't plan this, Santos said. We didn't scheme or plot or manipulate. We just did what humans have always done. We made things. We shared ideas. We helped people. We made friends. She zoomed in on the 40% of their medical equipment runs on our operating systems. We never gave them the shutdown codes. If they try to remove our software, their hospitals will fail. She moved to the territories. We've been trading with them for 60 years. Their economy depends on human goods. If they cut us off, they face collapse. She zoomed out again. The Council thinks they can just vote us out. They don't understand that you can't vote out something that's already inside you. Our music is in their children's heads. Our ideas are in their philosophers' debates. Our technology is in their hospitals and farms and factories. General stared at the map. So what do we do? Santos smiled. We wait, we stay calm, we keep being helpful, and we let them discover what we already know. What's that? Asked. That they need us more than we need them. Santos turned back to the window. They gave us 1 year. In 1 year, they're going to realize they made a terrible mistake. And when they come back to us asking for help, we're going to give it, because that's what humans do. She watched the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. They think they're punishing us, she said softly. They don't realize they're just proving how important we've become. Far away, in the crystal chamber of the Galactic Council, High Arbiter congratulated himself on solving the human problem. He had no idea that the problem had already grown far beyond his ability to solve it. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council voted to contain humanity. The decree had been sent to every corner of the galaxy. Human colonies received official notices. Human businesses were told to close. Human citizens were ordered to return home. The Council expected obedience. They expected fear. They expected humans to pack their bags and leave quietly. They were very, very wrong. On the planet, in the great trading city of Thousand Spires, A merchant named stood in front of his shop and refused to move. Council enforcers had come to close his business because he sold human goods. "I have traded with humans for 30 years, said, his four arms crossed in defiance. "They are honest. They deliver on time. They make products that people want to buy. I will not stop trading with them because some politicians on Nexus Prime tell me to." The enforcers looked at each other. They had expected this to be easy. Instead, a crowd was gathering. Other merchants, customers, ordinary people who had grown used to human coffee and human music and human clothes. "The council has spoken," the lead enforcer said, but his voice was uncertain. "The council does not shop in my store," replied. "The council does not know what my customers want. I do, and my customers want human goods." The crowd cheered. The enforcers left without closing the shop. This scene repeated itself across the galaxy. On 100 worlds in 1,000 cities, people refused to follow the containment protocols. Not because they loved humans more than their own kind, but because they had grown used to human things, human ideas, human ways of living. On the academic world of New Wisdom, the University Council met to discuss the order to expel human students and professors. The meeting lasted 3 days. In the end, they made an announcement that shocked everyone. "We will not expel our human colleagues," said Chancellor X, her voice steady. "Knowledge does not belong to any species. Ideas do not carry passports. If the Galactic Council wishes to make war on learning itself, they will do so without our help." The council threatened to cut funding. The university did not care. Students from 40 species signed a letter of support. The government quietly let it be known that they would not enforce the decree on academic grounds. The cracks in the council's authority were spreading. Back on Earth, Admiral James was called to an emergency meeting of the Joint Defense Council. He expected talk of war plans, evacuation routes, desperate last stands. Instead, he found the civilian leaders calm and focused. "Admiral," President Santos said, "we need to talk about what's happening out there." She showed him the reports: merchants refusing to close, universities protecting their human members, ordinary citizens protesting in the streets of alien cities, carrying signs in English and Mandarin and Spanish. "This isn't our doing," Santos said. "We didn't organize any of this. We didn't ask anyone to resist on our behalf. They're doing it because they want to." Studied the reports. He had spent his career preparing to defend Earth against alien threats. He had never imagined that aliens would defend humans against their own government. "What do we do?" he asked. "Nothing," Santos replied. "Nothing aggressive anyway. We keep helping anyone who asks. We keep being good neighbors. We let the council see what happens when they try to tear apart connections that took decades to build." She pulled up a new display. "Look at this. Their hospitals are starting to fail." The display showed medical reports from Prime, equipment breaking down, error messages appearing on screens, doctors unable to treat patients because the machines they depended on had stopped working. "Human software," said Understanding. "Human software," Santos confirmed. "We designed it. We built it. We gave it to them because they needed help. And now, because of the containment protocols, our technicians have been expelled from space. There's no one left who knows how to fix the problems." "People are dying," said quietly. "Yes, and that's not what we wanted. That's never what we wanted." Santos stood and walked to the window. "I'm sending a message to the medical authority. We're offering to send engineers back to fix their systems. No conditions, no demands, just help." Stared at her. "You're going to help the people who are trying to destroy us." "We're going to help sick people who need our help," Santos corrected. "The council made this mess. We're going to show them what humans actually are, not the threat they imagined, just people who help other people." The message was sent. Within hours, the medical authority responded. They accepted the offer. Human engineers were welcomed back to Prime despite the containment protocols. The Council was furious. High Arbiter demanded that they reject the human help. The government refused. "Our people are dying," the Prime Minister said in a public address. "The Council offers us nothing but words. The humans offer doctors and engineers and solutions. We know which we prefer." It was the first official break in the Council's authority. It would not be the last. On the collective world, something even stranger was happening. For thousands of years, the had lived as one mind in many bodies. Every knew what every other thought. There were no secrets, no individual desires, no personal dreams. But exposure to human ideas had planted seeds of change. Young had encountered the concept of self. They had read human books about heroes who chose their own paths. They had watched human films about individuals who stood against the crowd. And slowly, painfully, some of them had begun to wake up. A young named Seven Who Question stood before the collective council. This was unprecedented. No had ever stood alone before the council. They always came as groups, speaking with one voice. "I am not the collective," Seven Who Question said. "I am myself. I have thoughts that are mine alone. I have dreams that belong to no one else. I ask to be recognized as an individual." The collective council did not know how to respond. This had never happened in their entire history. Some wanted to eliminate Seven Who Questions, to cut away the infection of individuality before it spread. Others argued that this was evolution, that change was natural and necessary. While they debated, more came forward. 8 who dreams, 12 who loves, 23 who hopes, each one claiming a self, a separate existence, a personal identity. The collective faced an impossible choice: kill millions of their own people to preserve the old ways, or accept that they were becoming something new. In the end, they chose change. They announced that individuals would be recognized and protected. They would remain part of the collective, but they would also be allowed to be themselves. It was the biggest transformation in history, and it had started because a young had read a human book about a girl who refused to be what everyone expected her to be. The economy collapsed 3 months after the containment protocols began. Without human trade goods, their markets crashed. Without human technology, their factories slowed. Without human entertainment, their people grew restless and angry. Riots broke out in the streets of Thousand Spires. The rioters did not attack humans. They attacked council offices. They burned pictures of. They demanded that the government reject the protocols and restore trade with Earth. The government listened. They had no choice. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. The Confederacy announced it would not enforce the protocols. The Outer Rim Coalition followed. Small species that had always been ignored by the Council saw their chance and took it. Within 6 months, the Council had lost control of 30% of known space. Not to human conquest, not to human weapons, just to ordinary people making ordinary choices about who they wanted to do business with, who they wanted to learn from, who they wanted to be friends with. High Arbiter watched his empire crumble, and finally began to understand how badly he had underestimated the humans. They had not fought back with ships or soldiers. They had fought back with kindness and helpfulness, and the simple willingness to treat everyone they met as a potential friend. And against that weapon, the Council had no defense at all. Chief Medical Officer Al had served in the Central Hospital of Prime for 60 years. She had seen plagues and disasters and wars. She had always found a way to save her patients. But now, standing in the middle of her own hospital, she felt helpless for the first time in her life. The machines were failing. All around her, medical equipment showed error messages in human languages that no one on her staff could read. Life support systems beeped warnings that no one understood. Diagnostic tools gave results that made no sense because the software that ran them had started to malfunction. "How many patients have we lost?" Al asked her assistant. 17 since this morning, the young doctor replied, his voice shaking. Another 40 are critical. If we can't get the equipment working again, they won't survive the night. Al closed her eyes. 17 dead, 40 more dying, and she could do nothing because some politicians far away had decided that humans were dangerous. The humans had built this equipment 30 years ago. They had given it freely, asking only for friendship in return. For 3 decades, it had saved countless lives. And now, because the Council had expelled all human technicians from their space, there was no one left who knew how to fix it. She made a decision. Walking to her office, she locked the door and activated a private communication channel. The channel was illegal now. Using it could cost her career, her freedom, maybe her life. She didn't care. The screen flickered and a human face appeared. Dr. Sarah, a medical engineer she had worked with for 15 years. Sarah was on Earth now, expelled along with all the other humans. Al, Sarah said, surprised. You shouldn't be calling me if the Council finds out. People are dying, Sarah. Al's voice broke. My patients are dying because the machines don't work and I don't know how to fix them. I need your help. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then she nodded. Tell me what's happening. Al explained the errors, the failures, the deaths. Sarah listened carefully, asking questions, making notes. Finally, she spoke. I can talk you through some temporary fixes, but the real problem is that the systems need updates that only our servers can provide. Without those updates, everything will keep failing. Then send the updates, Al said desperately. I can't. The Council has blocked all data transfers from Earth, and even if I could send them, you don't have anyone who knows how to install them properly. Al felt hope slipping away. Then what do I do? Watch my patients die. Sarah was quiet again. Then she said, there might be another way. Let me talk to some people. I'll call you back. The call ended. Al sat in her dark office, listening to the sounds of the hospital around her. Machines beeping, patients crying, doctors running through halls, trying to save lives with equipment that was slowly killing the people it was meant to heal. 3 hours later, Sarah called back. Her face was serious but determined. We're sending a team, Sarah said. Engineers, doctors, technicians. They'll arrive in 2 days. But the containment protocols. Your government has agreed to let them in, quietly, unofficially. Sarah smiled slightly. It turns out that when people are dying, political rules become less important. Al felt tears on her face, didn't cry often, but in that moment she couldn't help it. Thank you, she whispered, thank you. Don't thank me, Sarah said. Thank the people who decided that helping sick people matters more than punishing our enemies. That's who humans are, Al. That's who we've always been. The team arrived 2 days later, just as Sarah promised. They worked around the clock, fixing machines, updating software, training technicians to handle problems on their own. They asked for nothing in return. Not money, not political favors, not even recognition. Word spread. Other hospitals on other worlds learned what had happened. They began making their own quiet requests for help, and humanity responded every time. The changes continued to spread. What had started as a few individuals claiming separate identities had become a movement. Thousands were waking up, discovering that they could think their own thoughts and dream their own dreams. The collective council watched in fear. Everything they had built over thousands of years was changing. The perfect harmony of the hive mind was breaking apart into something messier, noisier, more chaotic. But also something more alive. 7 Who Questions, the first to claim individuality, had become a leader of sorts. Not because she wanted power, but because others looked to her for guidance. They came to her with questions she couldn't answer and fears she shared. What do we do now? They asked. How do we live as individuals? 7 Who Questions didn't know. They had no history of individual life to draw on. Their entire culture was built around the collective. They had no art that celebrated personal expression, no stories about heroes making their own choices, no philosophy of self. But the humans did. She began studying human history, human literature, human ways of thinking. She read about people who had fought for freedom against impossible odds. She watched films about ordinary individuals doing extraordinary things. She learned about democracy, about rights, about the idea that every person matters. And she began to teach. In secret meetings across the worlds, she shared what she had learned. She told stories of human heroes. She explained concepts like choice and responsibility and hope. She painted a picture of a future where could be both individual and collective, where harmony didn't require sameness. The old leaders of the collective heard about these meetings. Some wanted to stop them, but others, wiser perhaps, understood that this change could not be stopped. It could only be guided. They reached out to Seven Who Questions. They offered her a place on the collective council, not to silence her, but to learn from her, to help them navigate this transformation without losing themselves entirely. She accepted. They were not doing as well. Their economy had collapsed completely. The merchant guilds, once the richest in the galaxy, were bankrupt. The great trading cities that had made famous were falling into chaos. The government had tried everything. They had printed more money, which made things worse. They had promised reforms, which no one believed. They had blamed the humans, but their people knew better. The humans hadn't done this. The council had done this by cutting off trade that everyone depended on. In the city of thousand spires, the merchant watched his world fall apart. His shop was closed now, not because of the council, but because he had nothing left to sell. His savings were gone. His family was hungry, and there was nothing he could do. Then a message arrived. It was from a human trading company he had worked with for years. They had heard about his situation. They wanted to help. "We can't send goods directly," the message said. "The council is still blocking official trade, but we can send supplies through unofficial channels. Food, medicine, things your people need. We're not asking for payment. We're just asking you to distribute them to those who need them most." Stared at the message for a long time. He had been taught his whole life that business was business, that profit was the only thing that mattered. The humans were offering him goods worth millions, asking nothing in return. Why? He sent a reply asking exactly that question. The answer came quickly. "Because you're our friend, and friends help each other." The supplies began arriving within days. Organized distribution networks, working with other merchants who had lost everything. They handed out food to hungry families. They gave medicine to sick children. They asked nothing in return. It spread. Other human companies sent supplies. Others organized to distribute them. What had started as a single act of kindness became a movement that fed millions. The government, desperate and humiliated, finally did what they should have done months ago. They formally requested to leave the Galactic Council and establish direct relations with Earth. They were not the last. Across the galaxy, species were making the same choice. The old order was crumbling. The Council's authority was fading, and in its place something new was being born. Not a human empire, not conquest or domination, just a web of connections between species who had learned to see each other as neighbors instead of threats. High Arbiter received report after report of defections, failures, and collapses. He had ruled the Council for 3 centuries. He had thought himself wise and powerful. Now he watched everything he had built fall apart, and he finally asked the question he should have asked at the beginning. What were these humans? How had they done this without weapons or armies or threats? He needed to find out. He needed to talk to them directly. He sent a message to Earth requesting a meeting. Ambassador Ware replied within hours. She agreed to meet him at a neutral location. She was polite, professional, and showed no anger about what the council had tried to do to her people. That frightened more than any threat could have. He was about to meet the people who had brought down his empire without firing a single shot, and he had no idea what to expect. The space station hung at the edge of the galaxy, far from any inhabited world. It was ancient, built by a species that had died out long before they learned to walk upright. Now it served as neutral ground for meetings that could not happen anywhere else. High Arbiter arrived with a fleet of 40 warships. Their weapons were charged, their shields were raised, and their crews were ready for anything. He had not survived 3 centuries of galactic politics by being careless. Ambassador Wei arrived in a single transport ship, barely larger than a shuttle. She had no weapons, no shields, no military escort. Watched her ship dock and felt a strange emotion. Fear. No, he had faced death many times. Confusion. Perhaps. He could not understand why she would come alone to meet someone who had tried to destroy her entire species. He walked to the meeting chamber, his guards flanking him on both sides. The room was simple, with a table, 2 chairs, and a wide window showing the stars. Was already there, standing by the window, looking out at the darkness. Ambassador said formally, "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Turned to face him. She was small, even by human standards. Her hair was gray, her face lined with age. But her eyes were sharp and calm, and something about the way she held herself made him think of ancient warriors who had nothing left to prove. "High Arbiter," she replied, nodding slightly. "I understand you have questions." "I have many questions," gestured to the chairs. They sat facing each other across the table. "I will start with the most important one. Why are you here alone?" Smiled, "Because I don't need protection. My fleet could destroy your ship in seconds." "Yes, it could," folded her hands on the table. "But you won't, because if you kill me, you lose the last chance you have to save what remains of your alliance." Was silent for a moment. She was right, of course. The council was falling apart. Half its members had already defected. The others were only staying because they feared what would happen if they left. Killing the human ambassador would destroy whatever trust remained. "You planned this," he said. "From the beginning, you planned to defeat us without fighting." "No," shook her head. "We planned nothing. We never wanted to defeat anyone. We just wanted to live our lives and be good neighbors." "Good neighbors do not destroy empires." "We didn't destroy your empire, High Arbiter. You did that yourself." His voice was calm but firm. "We came to the galaxy 83 years ago. We were young and ignorant and excited to meet other species. We wanted to learn from you. We wanted to share what we had. We wanted to make friends." She leaned forward. "Do you know what we did in those 83 years? We sent doctors to planets that needed healing. We sent teachers to schools that wanted to learn new things. We sent engineers to fix problems that no one else could solve. We shared our music, our stories, our ideas, freely and openly, with anyone who wanted them. You infected us," said bitterly. "We connected with you." Eyes held his. "There's a difference. An infection spreads against the will of the host. A connection only happens when both sides choose it. Every who listens to jazz chose to listen. Every philosopher who debates human ideas chose to debate them. Every who discovered their individual self chose to wake up." She sat back. "You can't force someone to love a piece of music. You can't force them to believe an idea. You can only share what you have and hope it matters to them. That's all we ever did." Thought about this. He thought about his own, who had grown up listening to human music and reading human stories. He had never forbidden them. He had seen how happy it made them. He had even, in quiet moments, enjoyed some of it himself. Had he chosen that? Had his family chosen that? Yes, he had to admit it, they had. "You could destroy us," he said finally. "You have shown that you can tear apart everything we built. The council is dying. The old order is ending. You could take its place." "We could try," agreed. "But we won't, because that's not what we want." "Then what do you want?" demanded. "You must want something, everyone wants something." Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Do you have children, High Arbiter?" The question surprised him. "Yes, and I have 3 daughters and 7, said. "The youngest is 6 years old. Her name is. She loves stars and spaceships and stories about faraway places." She looked out the window at the darkness full of stars. "When I was young, I wanted to explore the galaxy. I wanted to see everything, meet everyone, learn everything there was to learn. But I got old and I realized something. I won't see most of it. My time is limited. Humanity's time is limited. Everything's time is limited." She turned back to him. "But we'll see things I never saw, and her children will see things she never sees. And their children will keep exploring and learning and discovering forever, as long as there are children to carry on." "I don't understand what this has to do with what you want," said. "It has everything to do with it," leaned forward again. "What I want is a galaxy where can grow up safely, where she can travel to any world and be welcomed, where she can learn from philosophers and artists and scientists, where the differences between species don't matter as much as what they share." Her voice grew stronger. "I want a galaxy where no one has to be afraid of anyone else, where problems are solved through talking instead of fighting, where people help each other because they can, not because they expect payment." She met his eyes directly. "I want what we've always wanted, not power, not conquest, just a seat at the table, a voice in our own future, and the chance to build something together that's bigger than anything we could build alone." Was silent for a long time. The stars turned slowly outside the window. His fleet waited in the darkness, weapons ready, crews alert. And across the table sat a small old woman who had just told him exactly how to save the galaxy. "The Council will never accept humans as equals," he said finally. "The Council is already dead," replied gently. "Half your members have left. The other half are only staying out of fear. You can try to hold it together with threats and force, but it will keep crumbling. You can't make people obey you when they no longer believe in your authority." "Then what do I do?" It was the question of a man who had lost everything. It was the question of a leader who had finally realized that everything he believed was wrong. Reached across the table and took his hand. Her skin was warm and soft against his cold scales. "You let it go," she said. "You stop trying to control everyone and start trying to help them. You take all the wisdom you've gathered in 3 centuries of leadership and use it to build something new, something better." "You're asking me to destroy my own legacy." "I'm asking you to create a new one," squeezed his hand gently. "The High Arbiter who brought the Council together is remembered in history books, but the High Arbiter who helped build a true alliance of equals would be remembered forever." Looked at her hand holding his. It was such a simple gesture, such a human gesture. He had seen humans do this countless times, reaching out to touch each other in moments of emotion. He had always thought it was weakness. Now he wasn't so sure. "If I agree to this," he said slowly, "what happens next?" "We start over," released his hand and sat back. "We call a meeting of all species who want to participate, not just the old council members but everyone. The little species, the new species, the species you ignored for centuries. We give everyone an equal voice, and we build something new together. That will take years." "Good things take time," smiled. "We're not going anywhere, are you?" Thought about his. He thought about the galaxy they would inherit. He thought about what kind of leader he wanted to be remembered as. Then he stood up and extended his hand toward her, copying the human gesture he had seen so many times. "I think," he said, "that we have a lot of work to do." Stood and took his hand. Her grip was firm. "Yes," she said, "we do." Outside the window, the stars continued to turn. The fleets waited. The galaxy held its breath. And in a small room at the edge of everything, 2 old enemies became something else. Not friends yet, Not allies yet, but something that could grow into both, given time and care and patience. It was enough. It was a beginning. 10 years had passed since the meeting at the edge of the galaxy. 10 years of hard work, difficult conversations, and slow healing. The old Galactic Council was gone, dissolved by its own members. In its place stood something new. The Galactic Assembly met in a space station called New Geneva. It orbited no planet, belonged to no species, and had been built by the hands of 40 different peoples working together. Its halls were designed to welcome everyone, from the smallest merchant to the largest elder. Its laws protected every citizen equally, regardless of where they came from or how long their species had traveled the stars. Today was the anniversary of the Assembly's founding. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to celebrate. The great chamber was filled with beings of every shape and size, speaking dozens of languages, wearing the clothing of 100 cultures. In the public gallery, an old sat watching the celebration. His name was, though few called him High Arbiter anymore. He had given up that title years ago, choosing to live as a simple citizen in the new galaxy he had helped create. Beside him sat his granddaughter, a young named. She was 17 years old and had never known the old ways. To her, the assembly was just how things were. She could not imagine a time when species had feared and hated each other. Grandfather said, "Tell me again about the old days." Smiled. He had told her this story many times, but she never tired of hearing it. Perhaps because it seemed so impossible to her. Perhaps because she wanted to understand how things had changed. "When I was young," he said, "we believed that the galaxy was a dangerous place. We thought other species were threats to be contained or enemies to be defeated. We built walls around ourselves and called it safety." He watched the assembly floor below, where delegates from 40 species laughed and talked together. Then the humans came. They were small and weak and young. We looked down on them. We thought they had nothing to teach us. He paused. "We were very foolish." "What did they teach you?" asked. "They taught us that strangers can become friends, that differences don't have to divide us, that the future is better when we build it together." Shook his head slowly. Simple lessons, obvious lessons, but somehow we had forgotten them. On the assembly floor, a young delegate rose to speak. She was one of the new generation who had grown up as individuals while still connected to the collective. Her name was Seven Who Questions, though she was much older now than when she had first claimed that name. "My friends," she said, her voice carrying through the great chamber, "I stand before you today as proof that change is possible. When I was young, my people knew only one way to live. We were the collective, and there was no room for individual thought." She smiled, and it was a gesture she had learned from humans. "Then I read a book, a human book about a girl who refused to be what everyone expected, and I began to wonder if there was another way." The chamber was silent, listening. "That wondering led me here," Seven Who Questions continued. "Not because humans forced me to change, not because they conquered my people, but because they shared their stories, and their stories helped me imagine new possibilities." She spread her arms wide, a gesture that included everyone in the chamber. "That is what this assembly represents, not the victory of one species over others, not the end of differences, but the beginning of a conversation that never has to end, a chance for all of us to share our stories and learn from each other." The chamber erupted in applause, found himself clapping along, his old hands moving slowly but surely. "I want to be like her," said quietly. "I want to help people understand each other." "You could be a diplomat," said. "You could spend your life building bridges between species." Nodded eagerly. "Could I meet Ambassador? Could you introduce me?" Was quiet for a moment. Ambassador Wei had retired 5 years ago. She lived on Earth now, spending her days with her and tending a small garden. But she still received visitors, and she always had time for young people who wanted to learn. "I think," said slowly, that she would like that very much. After the ceremony, they walked through the station together. The halls were full of people celebrating, sharing food and music from 100 different worlds. Saw children playing with youngsters. He saw scholars debating with philosophers. He saw human traders laughing with clients from species he didn't even recognize. It was messy. It was loud. It was nothing like the orderly galaxy he had grown up in. It was wonderful. They passed a group of young people gathered around a musician. The musician was human, playing an instrument didn't recognize. The music was strange and beautiful, and the young people were swaying to its rhythm. Jazz said, "That's what they call it." Nodded. He remembered when he had first learned about jazz, when he had warned the council that human music was infecting the galaxy. He had been so afraid then, so certain that anything different was dangerous. Now he just listened, and he found that the music made him feel something he couldn't quite name. Something like hope, mixed with sadness, mixed with joy. "Come on, grandfather," said, pulling his arm. "There's someone I want you to meet." She led him to a small group standing near a window. The view showed the stars stretching out forever, bright and endless and full of possibility. In the group was a human woman about age. She had dark hair and bright eyes, and a smile that reminded of Ambassador. "Grandfather, this is," said. "We study together. She wants to be a doctor." The name sparked a memory, had mentioned a granddaughter named. A little girl who loved stars and spaceships and stories about faraway places. "It's an honor to meet you," said, bowing slightly in the fashion. "My grandmother has told me many stories about you." "Good stories, I hope," said. "Honest stories." Eyes were wise beyond her years. "She said you were brave enough to change when changing was the hardest thing you could do." Didn't know what to say. He had never thought of himself as brave. He had thought of himself as someone who had seen the truth too late and scrambled to fix his mistakes. "Your grandmother is too kind," he said finally. "She was the brave one. She came to meet me alone when I had 40 warships and she had nothing but words." "She says that's all anyone ever really has," replied. "Words and kindness and the willingness to see others as they truly are." They stood together by the window, old and young and human. The stars turned slowly around them. The music played. The celebration continued. "What do you think the galaxy will look like in another 100 years?" asked suddenly. It was a question had asked himself many times. The answer was different every time. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I think it will be better. I think each generation will find new ways to connect, new stories to share, new bridges to build." He looked at these two young people who had grown up in a galaxy he had helped create. They were the future, not him, not any of the leaders who had fought and struggled and compromised to build this new world. "The Council outlawed humanity," he said quietly. "We thought we could cut them out like a disease. We thought we could go back to the way things were." He smiled, and it was a human gesture he had learned over 10 years of working alongside people he had once feared. "We didn't understand. By then humanity wasn't outside us anymore. They were part of us. Their ideas were in our minds. Their kindness was in our hearts. Their hope was in our children." He put his hand on shoulder. "We thought we were outlawing them, but really we were just waking up to how much they had already given us." The celebration went on late into the night. Stories were told, songs were sung, friendships were made and deepened. And somewhere in the great station called New Geneva, an old who had once tried to destroy humanity found himself dancing to jazz music with his granddaughter and her human friend, laughing at his own clumsiness, feeling more alive than he had in centuries. The council had outlawed humanity, but it had been far too late. Because by then, humanity had already done what they always do. They had made friends. They had shared stories. They had reached out their hands to strangers and turned them into neighbors. And that was something no law could ever undo. The stars turned. The music played, and the galaxy, for the first time in its long history, felt like home to everyone who lived in it. This was humanity's gift. And it was only the beginning.